travel restrictions are over, people's increased air travel for both business and pleasure would boost aircraft production in the future. And this would significantly impact the aviation maintenance, repair and overhaul MRO market. Increasing technological innovations and digitalization in aviation MRO are expected to further bolster the growth of this market over the next few years. That's due to increased air traffic, rising investment in aircraft MRO software, including government support, among others. Now, how can MRO players emerge stronger from the COVID-19 pandemic? I'm Zahir Kelvinong Abdullah, and this is Money Matters. A major trend gaining pace in aviation maintenance, repair and overhaul market is the growing business travel. In future, the business travel and corporate travel would be increased, and it would lead to the demand for the air transport, which requires the maintenance and repair. To speak more on this, we have in the studio today Adora Asha'ari Ismail. She's the Chief Executive Officer of Systematic Aviation Services Sdn Berhad. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me here today.
It's a pleasure having you with us. Now, can I start off by asking you that back in 1992, your first SES office basically evolved from a converted restroom.
Yes.
So you can say that's under humble circumstances, right? So now that SES aims to be a one-stop center for aviation needs in the Southeast Asian region, within 3 decades, how have you seen the growth for your company?
Well, it has definitely expanded quite a fair bit. I mean, starting from a converted toilet. I am the second generation, by the way, to Systematic Aviation Services. So it was my late father who is the founding person of SAS. So his goal in life and his life motto day to day is that if somebody says no, you prove them wrong, and then you show them that it's possible to get things done. So when he first started up, it started from he did not have an office. And Subang Airport back then was very small, so all he could find was a toilet that was unused, and he converted into an office. And from there, you know, the business expanded, and now we own 3 different hangars in Subang Airport itself, including the hangar where this restroom now sits in.
Right.
So we still have it in our office. So if you do ever come to Subang Airport, it's still there to always remind us of our humble beginnings. So it has changed quite a fair bit. The business has grown from MRO. We started off as a maintenance company. That was what we did from the very beginning, and then we expanded into air charters. So we do helicopter and plane charters. And recently we embarked into aviation training. So it has definitely grown, and it has grown even more during my time in this last 2 years that I have been managing the company.
But were you groomed by your father to take over the business?
Yes, yes and no. Well, so basically, back in 2009, my dad unfortunately was diagnosed with cancer. So at that time I was sent to boarding school. So my dad is a very proud RMC boy. So for all these RMC guys watching the show, they'll be very proud to say that Ismail was an RMC boy. But unfortunately, Dad only has daughters, so none of us were eligible for the Royal Military College. So that being said, at the age of 15, he wanted us to embark in the same journey that he did. So we were shipped to boarding school, and I was shipped to Australia during that time. So in 2009, when he was first diagnosed with cancer, I think it sort of shifted what I wanted to do and what I had to do. So we had a very good talk between him and I about what needed to be done for the future of the company. I was only 15 at that time, but he said, you know, slowly, you've got to start filling the role. So I did the most Asian thing possible, which was accounting and corporate finance. I went into that, but I'm very lucky that I enjoyed it. And he's always been aviation, so I grew up with a father in aviation who's always opened my eyes to different things. So I guess, you know, it all kind of fall into place when I graduated, you know, had my first job. And when he was in 2016, he called me back to help the business. His main point was that to run the business, you have to be part of it. So you can't just come back and run a business. So he wanted me to learn from the very bottom and make my way to the top. And that's what I did. I used to work outside in the sun with the guys pulling the aircrafts in and out. I was doing ground operation works. I was folding the aircrafts for flight. So I knew what it was like at all levels of the company.
But it was interesting as well that you took it as a challenge and not decide to shy away from it, doing the physical work of, like you said, of moving the aircraft and all. So
I think it was something more of like how he had trained us, you know. So fear is never something that you should, you know, pawn over. So it's something that you must always try something new and, you know, go for it. So that was always how he groomed all of us, my sisters and and I guess that helped a lot.
Right. So the growth of the business, of course, is commendable, but of course, then COVID-19, the pandemic came, and the recent pandemic basically hit the aviation industry very, very hard. I think with the industry perhaps wiping out thousands of jobs and, you know, I mean, in terms of uncountable billions in terms of revenue. So for your company, did you have to change your strategy moving forward, your business strategy? Because this is something that is quite people-centric as well.
Yeah. Well, you see, for me, it was double the challenge because my late father fell sick in June 2019 and had passed on January of 2020. So during that time, I was transitioning into my role as now the head of the company. I was not only the head of the company, I was also the head of my household. I still have my mother and my sisters I had to look after. So I think that was already a challenge itself. And then, you know, just 2 months after the first lockdown happened and then the pandemic hit with you know, from every angle. So I think definitely the business strategy had changed, you know, but I guess, you know, if you really want to be around, you got to work hard to stay around. So I think we definitely had to change our business portfolio. What we thought was a good strategy had to change. I think we did hit a couple of walls along the way, but I have a solid team that works with me that keeps driving the company moving forward.
Right, because during our interviews with other corporate leaders, with respect to how they came out of the COVID-19 pandemic, they said that there is no fixed and fast rule, no written handbook on how to get out of it. So in terms of what you've mentioned, you have been, I mean, SES has been in a lot of different sectors. Which was the most challenging during this time?
I would say the MRO, which is the aircraft maintenance, which is actually the core business of the company, because you see, towards pre-pandemic, we highly depended on customers that came from abroad. So we were doing maintenance for Indonesia and many various different countries within the region. And with the lockdown, people weren't able, you know, were not able to travel. We were not able to go to them. So I think that was the main part of SAS that was highly impacted during the pandemic. Our air charter services also were put on hold because we could not travel even interstate if we wanted to, you know, without valid reasons. So, you know, one way or another, it did impact various different sectors of our business.
Right. So how did you basically keep your staff secure?
Diversifying. So I think a team of us sort of sat together and did a whole good brainstorm among us to talk about what is it that the industry now needs while it is in status quo. You know, the whole industry is put on hold. So what is it that we can provide back to the industry so that when the industry kicks off after the pandemic, that everybody's ready. So they're not just sitting laid back. And, you know, because it's a lot. Like the aviation industry is a well-relegated industry. So, you know, you need to always be current with the kind of trainings and things like that. Pilots need to be constantly, you know, trained, even engineers, things like that. So I think that's how our training school came about, you know, and we sort of catered for what the industry needed at that time.
Right. Okay, you hold that thought. We've just got to go for a very quick commercial break. We'll have more on the high-flying business when we return right after this reel, so don't go away. Thank you for staying with Money Matters. Now, Ida, the travel restrictions basically are now over. Increased air travel would have an impact on the aviation MRO. What areas do you think are deemed feasible to bolster the growth of this market over the next few years? Perhaps even looking at increasing technological innovations and digitalization, for example.
Yep. I think, well, definitely for my sector of the aviation industry, I work very closely with helicopters and also lighter planes. So I don't actually work with commercial airlines. So the usual traditional big commercial airline planes, those aren't the aircrafts that I work with. But I do see that in the next coming years into the future is that people are looking at upgrading the aircrafts that they have, because definitely during the pandemic, people aren't sitting down quietly at home, so they are coming up with new types of products. Some are looking at, for example, electric planes and helicopters. So these are the things that I feel like over time people are evolving into, and like it or not, you do have to evolve towards it, like everybody else around the world.
Yeah, so for the MRO industry, I mean, evolving, is this a difficult process? I
would believe that it's not that hard if you stick with what the world is doing. So, for example, like the licensing, the training that people are now, they have to constantly upgrade themselves. Like I know that, for example, in SAS, that is a very vital point, because to us, the asset of the company is actually the people that work for the company. So you constantly have to get these people to grow in terms of their capability and their knowledge and their experiences. So these, you know, you've got to keep evolving over time, which is why we do have our own training school, which looks at the personal growth of people, you know, not just for the company, but also the industry as a whole.
Now, this brings me to a very interesting question as to what you have been doing.
Yeah.
So obviously, like you mentioned, your father basically groomed you, and you are the youngest CEO in aviation history for Malaysia.
Thank you.
So, looking at the staff, I'm sure you've inherited a lot of stuff from your father's time as well. So how did it take you? Because, again, this is a very male-dominated industry.
Yeah. Well, see, for a lot of them in the company, I grew up with them. So, you know, like my late father had been in the industry since I was very, very small. You know, I still have one of the oldest technicians and engineers that have been working since I was in kindy. You know, so I don't know to call them uncle or call them by their name now that I'm the CEO of the company.
Do they call you boss?
They call me boss. So now they call me boss. So I do from time to time find it very awkward, because, you know, I grew up with them. But, you know, it is a very male-dominated industry. But I would say from the time that I've been in it that I've met so many amazing women that that are leaders, and even, you know, engineers, pilots, technicians. My sister herself is a helicopter pilot, so I do, you know, I know that it's no longer a restriction for females to enter the industry. I don't feel so intimidated by the male population in the industry, because I think it goes back to, if you go to work and you kind of put aside gender, I think you can work with everyone else. I grew up abroad for most of my life, so it was a common thing, you know, overseas, that male and female work together, so it's not an issue. And I think the guys at the office have also transitioned with the same mindset and goal as me over the time that I've been there.
And what about those not within your company? How do they see you as a young CEO leading aviation company in what is seen as a very niche industry, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do get from time to time people wondering, like, who is this young person, you know, what does she know about aviation? I do get that from time to time. But I think usually people are also amazed with how I am because of the vision that I see. Well, and it all started from all the experiences and, like, for example, like air shows and trainings that my father used to take me, you know, the trips that we would go together, and he was always exposing me to different things. And I think with what I gained with my years of experience abroad, I would like to take the good back into the country and, you know, grow it here. So I think that is what I have been doing. And a lot of people, I think initially they're a bit amazed with how I am, because they did not think that I was as passionate. You know, usually it's very common, second generation CEOs, you know, they don't have the same passion as the first generation, but I am as passionate as my late father ever was. So I think that's what has grown with everyone that knows me.
Okay. Now, moving on, countries in the region like Singapore basically are competing against Hong Kong, and some of them really have been promoting aviation services like aircraft MRO.
Yeah.
But Malaysia has something that Singapore does not have, and people have always said that's space. We've got more space than what we can do. So can you sort of give us an idea of where we stand in terms of competition, and also the government's ideas around aviation, its viability as a key sector in Malaysia?
Well, I fly around a lot. You know, the helicopters were constantly flying around all the time. And I can tell you, Malaysia is rich with land. So there's always growth for expansion there in itself. I think labor cost is still very cheap in this country compared to other parts of the world. So it makes it more attractive for people from overseas to come and actually make Malaysia the maintenance hub. I would also say, this is from experience, that the Malaysian hospitality has always been one of our thumbs up. You know, we've got customers from Singapore, from Indonesia, from Thailand, that they love coming to Malaysia for maintenance because of the warm hospitality that we have, you know.
But and what about the pricing? Are you more competitive as compared to Singapore and Hong Kong?
I think we're still a lot cheaper than other parts of the world. So I think that is also one of the reasons why it becomes more attractive to do maintenance in Malaysia.
Right.
And I think labor cost is also still, it is rising over time, but compared to different parts of the world, it's still quite, it's a lot cheaper here.
Okay, we've just got to go for our final commercial break, so stay with us and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Money Matters. We're talking to the Chief Executive Officer of Systematic Aviation Services, Sdn Berhad, Adora Asha'ari Ismail. Now, before we went for the commercial break, you were talking about expanding and things like that as well. So you have, if I'm not mistaken, 5 hangars in Peninsular Malaysia and a base each in Sabah and Sarawak, plus regional extensions which you're going to do in Indonesia. So why did you pick Indonesia?
It's the closest neighboring country that we have, you know, and if you actually study and learn about the Indonesian market, it is 10, 20, 30 times bigger than it is here in Malaysia, you know. So it is definitely a market that we, Malaysia, should embark into in providing the services, you know, because there's a whole large pool. Instead of hunting in the same pool here in Malaysia, we might as well, you know, extend the pool, and Indonesia's there with numbers, hundreds of helicopters and planes for us to service in our MROs.
Right. In particular, where in Indonesia are you setting up?
Well, in Indonesia, basically how the whole setup is that the Indonesian aircrafts actually come to Malaysia to do their maintenance here with us. So how it works is that because we are stationed in Borneo, like SAS, we've got a base in both Sabah and Sarawak, we cater for our customers that are in the Borneo region, some that travel all the way from Sumatra. So we do cater from different regions of Indonesia based on where we are. Central as it is, we are based in Subang, so we get these customers to come into Subang Airport and do the maintenance there.
Are you increasing the capacity of your base in Sabah and Sarawak now that Indonesia has announced that they're moving their capital to Nusantara? Obviously, there'll be more aircraft, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not a secret. So we are currently building a hangar in KIA Airport in Kuching. So there will be a hangar hopefully by end of next year there.
Okay.
So that is to cater for Indonesia that is moving as a central district to Borneo.
So now that's what you are doing, but what is the government doing in terms of helping you, in terms of getting support or the incentives that they're giving to you?
Well, look, I think the platform begins with the airport itself. You know, like the business that I'm in, if I'm not operating in an airport, if I'm not operating from a hangar, I can't do business. So usually I have to find a home. And, you know, amazing as it is, we've had Subang Airport, which is, you know, located in Selangor. And then even our KLIA is located, you know, there in most of the Selangor land. So basically, I think that platform has given its kickstart to operators like myself. You know, the aviation industry that I'm in, even the segment that I'm in, it's quite a small market. So I think it is good that we've had a platform to begin with by having a home to be at, you know, so that we can do maintenance for people around the region. So that is where I see the state government, even during the pandemic, I think, I mean, it's no secret that around the world everyone is impacted by the pandemic. So I think the state government has looked into incentives on how to help companies like myself, the local companies in expanding. So they have been coming to a lot of us in offering their assistance on how is it that we, doing the business that we do, what can they assist in growth in that way. You know, just last year, I think the kickstart of trying to get out of the pandemic was to introduce an air show, and we were very much part of this air show. And you know, it was an amazing. You know, there were a lot of COVID SOPs, but I think it was actually a good start to get everyone just back, you know, and the hype back in place, so that people will not, you know, would keep growing in that way.
Right. So you just said that this is your second time joining the Selangor Aviation Show this year.
This year will be the second.
The second time. Okay. Yeah. So why and how do you think that the air shows like this would basically help the industry? Okay,
so I'll backtrack to where with what I do with what I've been doing with my late father. So since I was very young, how I know aviation is that I always go for air shows and fly-ins, whether they are here in Malaysia, whether they are in Dubai, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in Amsterdam. So my dad has always made it a point that we would have to travel to see, because at air shows, you're looking at people coming in with various different types of aircraft that you've never seen before. You're looking at different kinds of drones that are now in the market that you've never thought that people would come up with these kind of designs. But like I said, during the pandemic, people were at home, they didn't have anything to do, and these amazing ideas come out here and there. So where else do you portray and market yourself? It's actually at these kind of air shows. So it's been a good incentive by the state government in offering this air show because it brings people together, it brings the public there, you know, so it creates a lot of public awareness also in what aviation is all about and different segments. So like the Selangor Air Show that we were part of last year and we will be participating this year actually introduces our sector of the aviation industry, which is usually not really heard about, which is the general aviation industry, you know. So it creates a lot of awareness to the public, you know, like I see high school leavers coming over for the air show wanting to know what is it like becoming an engineer in the general aviation industry? What is it like working with helicopters? And I think that platform is always good because I grew up learning about aviation through air shows.
Right.
So I always am a big fan of air shows
well,
at the end of the day.
Honestly, we wish you much success in what you're doing. Ida, thank you very much for being on Money Matters. It's been a pleasure having you with us. For the past half an hour, you've been with us on Money Matters. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week with more money insights that matter. Till then, I'm Zahil Calvinong Abdullah. Have a great weekend and stay safe.